Well, the Raiders are on a 4-game losing streak, and the question now is it time to look at draft boards, or is there still a little bit of hope? We're going to get to it today on the Raider Squad Show with myself, Chantel Chand, and Hugh Myers, who you're going to hear from next.
Draft boards already? It's only October. Say it ain't so. I think a real good question is, Gino Smith, at what point do you go to someone else? That plus more on today's edition of the Raider Squad Show. Let's get it.
Raider Nation, it's time. This is the Raiders Squad. Everything Las Vegas Raiders every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Death Star in the desert. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Commitment to excellence starts here. The Raiders Squad Show starts now.
Hey, what's up, Raider Nation? Remember, if you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media channels, and you'll see in the description below the ways that you can connect with us. You can also find us on the audio side. So wherever you find your, shows, podcasts, you can find us there as well. Give us a 5-star, leave a rate and review. That helps the channel grow. And we do want to say we do appreciate you making this your first listen of the day, whether it's the Raider Squad Show or a Q's Locked On Raiders. We appreciate you helping the channel grow, also the show grow, and we just want to thank you so much for rocking with us. Obviously, we're missing big Link today. Lincoln Kennedy is out, but he'll be back later in the week, so don't worry. Professor Kennedy will be back. It's you and I today, Q, and we got a lot to get to on this show. Obviously, near the final segment, we're going to be talking about some of your comments and questions that you've posted in the chat, so please leave that in the chat. Keep those comments and questions coming. If you have any for Q as well, specifically, you can drop them in the chat for him. We'll take care of that in the final segment. We are going to be talking about, the Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly era, and also just in terms of whether this is actually a rebuild at this point. We're going to get into that. And obviously, we got to talk about Gino Smith because that's been one of the biggest stories this year. But Q, we didn't get a chance to do the show on Monday. And obviously, I think the biggest story out of that was the Raiders lost to the Colts 40-6, which was a brutal game for Raider Nation to watch, for the players to be a part of, for the coaching staff. It was just embarrassing for that to happen. Just your takeaways from that game, and what were your biggest concerns?
Well, I mean, just the style that they lost, right? I mean, it's one thing to lose a game. You're going to do that, right? I don't think any of us believed that the Raiders were going to go 17-0 this season. I think a lot of us believed that they were going to be competitive, though, in every single game. And, I pegged them early in the season to have 8 or 9 wins. And I know a lot of Raider Nation kept looking at me like, what are you thinking? Why is that so low? What are you doing? It's time for the playoffs. And I kept saying that, it's hard to win games in the National Football League. And this is a team that only won 4 a year ago. So I thought, okay, you double that win total. That's a really good start in week 1. And, being around the team at OTAs, at mandatory minicamp, at training camp, seeing them throughout the course of the preseason, talking to players and coaches, I thought, okay, they're trending in the right direction. They're going to get this thing figured out. It's going to be some tough days here and there, but it's not going to be embarrassing. And so far through 5 weeks, they've been blown out twice. And that was what's, to me, is the biggest shock. And the way that Indianapolis, who I don't think when the schedule dropped, a lot of us looked at the Colts and said, oh, man, that's going to be a juggernaut. That's going to be a team that might put up 40 points on the Raiders. I think we all thought that against the Commanders, right? When the schedule dropped, seeing what they did a year ago, we're all like, man, that's a tough team. But the Colts, I think we all looked at it like, it's just the Colts. But they got off to a hot start, right? And so they're playing really good. They're 3-1 going into Sunday's game. So I said, you know what? This is going to be tough. I didn't feel good about the game going into it. I didn't think it was going to be a 40-6 beatdown. I didn't think the Raiders were going to be the only team across the league not to get into the end zone in week 5. You know what I mean? Like, that stuff right there can't happen. And, it kind of really set the tone for the Raiders when they go on their first offensive drive and they go 9+ minutes and they settle for 3. And that's the second time that they've had an extended drive like that covers a ton of minutes, a ton of plays, and they settle for 3. That right there gave me a very uneasy feeling in that game. I thought, oh, boy, that was a win for the Colts. And, well, the Colts just rattled off a bunch of wins following that. So, yeah, man, it was not the kind of showing and performance that I was expecting from this team ever under head coach Pete Carroll. And, the fact that he's acknowledged that this is actually a bigger build than he anticipated, that's also very concerning.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned it. You said something perfectly concerning, actually, right? They have a 9-minute drive, and that was their best drive of the game. They were fluid during that drive, but they settled for just 3 points, and that was worrisome. But at the same time, I was like, okay, that wasn't the worst drive, right? Like they're
Mhm.
getting some chemistry, but the rest of the game was a total different story. And Q, I think one of the issues is actually special teams. And special teams
Yeah.
has always been a strong suit for the Raiders. Were you surprised to see special teams struggle so much so far this season? And now we're hearing that Carlson, obviously dealing with the injury as well. Like there's need to be worried here, right, for special teams, because it just seems like they haven't been able to put it together this season.
Special teams is very unspecial right now. And that's the problem, because you're right. And I said that to Pete Carroll yesterday that, hey, special teams has always been a strong suit of this team, right? Whether it's the kicker, the punter, the kick coverage team. The only thing that hasn't really been a strong suit is kick return. And that's just because, well, the Raiders haven't had a Jacoby Ford, which is many, many moons ago. There's Raider fans that don't even know who the hell Jacoby Ford is. So that's how long that's been. But outside of that, this has been a really good unit, and it hasn't been this year. They're giving up kick returns. There was one taken to the house on Sunday. The Raiders just got fortunate that it got called back for a holding penalty, but that's been the issue, is that the special teams is not special. And, a lot of it has to do with young players that were stars in college that didn't have to play special teams, that are learning how to play special teams now, guys that are just getting in, on this unit. They're getting out of their lanes. They're not doing their assignment. Carter Runyon on that kick return, he was out of his lane, and like I said, got bailed out because it was a holding penalty, but they're just not doing what they're supposed to do. Like they say, do your job. They're just not doing their job. And so you're seeing the kick return coverage. They're real leaky. Daniel Carlson is not Cash Money Carlson like he's been over the time. I mean, look, I know that 57 yards is a 57-yard field goal, but, as Kirk Morrison told me on yesterday, like 40 is the new 30, 30 is the new 20 all the time. Well, 50 is the new 40, right? These guys are drilling these kicks all the time, and he has the leg strength to be able to knock it in for 57. Should have been able to get it done, right? And just isn't. And of course, AJ Cole, he's banged up now because of the block punt that he suffered when Ian Thomas just completely whiffed trying to block a defender, and that's the same side that the field goal was blocked on the week before against the Bears. So obviously, as a breakdown on that side, that's where Big Mike usually is, and so it's a problem, and they've got to figure out how to solve it. Tom McMahon, he's got to have a lot of heat on him right now, trying to figure out how to make his unit special again, because really it's just not. It's a bad unit right now, and it's really a lot of bad football being played, period.
Yeah, and that's extremely worrisome too, right? If you're thinking about special teams and you're thinking about AJ Cole possibly not being able to play, but we did hear some kind of good news, right? In the fact that Big Mike might be back. He might be back for this upcoming week, which is huge because they're playing the Titans, another 1-4 team. But that's obviously, been a loss there at the tight end position. And then also Brock Bowers, who has, been limited during practice. And we know for a guy like Brock, he's been dealing with this injury for weeks now. So I feel like, there's no rush to bring him back after what we just saw on Sunday, right? The Raiders get smoked 40-6. I really don't think that they should rush Brock Bowers back, but there's also the concern of whether or not this season, what the identity of the Raiders is. I think that's a huge question, Q, because it's like going into the season, I think we all kind of thought 7 to 9 wins. 7 to 9 wins. If they double their win count, that's a successful season. If they go from 4 to 8, that's a success. They're sitting at 1-4 right now. And we're taking a look at these stretch of games, and you're thinking, the Bears, the Colts, and the Titans, those should have been 3 wins at the beginning of the season. And now we're sitting here, they're sitting 1-4. And before the bye week, they got to play the Chiefs, who, by the way, lost to Jacksonville last night. But this is a team that I think was having a lot of hype around them. And then they start 1-4, and now all these questions are coming about. But it's like the moves that they made during the offseason told us that it wasn't a rebuild. If I'm being correct, right? Like you don't feel like this. Do you feel like it's a rebuild now, looking at it, like that they should focus on making it a full rebuild instead of trying to rebuild on the fly? Because I got to keep it real, Q. This is not a good football team based on what I saw on Sunday.
No, it's not a good football team, and that's the harsh reality of it. And the thing is, and I said it before, it's actually before any games were played, the Raiders are trying to win now and also build for the future. That is not easy to do. It is a very difficult task. When you try to do both at the same time, then you're picking certain veterans here, then you're bringing in certain young guys, and and Pete Carroll wants to win, right? And he's not a guy that's going to be around for 5, 6, 7 years as the head coach, right? He'll be around a couple years, 2, 3 years, probably max, and then he'll ride off into the sunset and leave it for someone else. So he wants to win as many games as possible right now. So you have to figure out how you go about doing that when you're trying to do both at the same time. It feels like he said yesterday, that this is more than he actually expected it to be at this stage of the game. So to me, it feels like it's way more of a rebuild than he anticipated. I kind of feel like it's always a rebuild when you hit reset and bring in a new head coach, and the Raiders do it every year. And that's the problem. That's been the problem for the last handful of years, that they keep turning over the roster, turning over the coaching staff, turning over the roster, turning over the coaching staff. You can never get any continuity on who fits with what you're trying to do, because you keep on turning things over. So Pete Carroll's idea of a Raider is different than Antonio Pierce's idea of a Raider, which is different than Josh McDaniels' idea of a Raider, which is different than John Gruden's idea of a Raider, and so on and so forth. Like, you just can't get any kind of continuity with that. And oh, by the way, you're switching GMs as well. So yeah, it's tough sledding right now. I had this team pegged at 8 wins. I also had them winning 4 by the time they got to the bye week. Clearly, that's not going to happen, right? There's only 2 games before the bye week, and one of them is Kansas City, as you mentioned, on the road. So they got a tough road to hoe. I mean, there's no doubt about it. They can only take it one game at a time. You can't make up three games in one. So you have to focus in on Tennessee Titans, hope that you get win number 2 this upcoming week, then focus on Kansas City, then get to the bye week and get healthy. As far as Brock Bowers goes, I think he's a guy that you probably don't see until after the bye, and I think I'm okay with that. Clearly, he's not healthy. You could tell that since week 1, he hasn't been there, and he hasn't been right? He's been out there, but he just hasn't been right. And so I think that even though he wants to play, all these guys want to play. There's nothing more that they want to do. Big Mike wants to play, and he's still in concussion protocol. Today, he'll actually try to clear that, and so hopefully he'll be back on the practice field tomorrow. But you just can't force them out there. If they're injured and banged up, you just got to let them get healthy. And Brock is too important for the success of the Raiders' future to go ahead and risk him getting even more injured. So as far as I'm concerned, if it's me, I'm sitting him down till the bye week, and then we'll revisit it and say, okay, how is he feeling? How's he looking? What does it look like on imaging and everything? And then go from there and see if he's ready to go for the second half of the season. But again, it's not up to me. So we'll see how they play that out.
Yeah, and with concussions, you never really know how long it's going to take.
Yeah.
So he might not even clear it, but it seems like it's being positive right now with everything coming out. A couple of things that weren't so positive. It was actually announced yesterday that Germaine Pratt has been released by the team.
Yeah.
This was kind of a shock to me, Q. Were you hearing anything before he didn't travel with the team this past weekend and before he got released?
No, but when we found out on Saturday, we got hit up by PR saying that, hey, Germaine Pratt is out for Sunday. He's not traveling to Indy. We kind of saw it, it put our radar up. Like, okay, hold on. He's one of the better linebackers. He's a cover linebacker. He's got 25 tackles on the season through 4 games. You're not just going to leave that guy at home just because, right? And as Pete Carroll said after the game, we just thought that we'd go with someone else. Well, you don't just think that you're going to go with somebody else, right? So obviously something happened. And the one thing I know is if you're, a coach and you're trying to instill your ideas and your philosophies on players, young guys, it's a lot easier to say, hey, Q, this is how I want you to do it. And I'm a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed rookie. I'm like, okay, coach, because that's all I want to do. I just want to do what coach wants me to do, and I want to do, and I want to be on the field, and I want to participate. Now, if I'm a veteran that's been in the league and I do something my way, and I've done it this way for my whole career, and I've been very successful at it, and you brought me in as a free agent, I might give you a little pushback and say, yeah, Chantel, I get what you're telling me, but this is what works for me, and this is what I'm going to do. And that could become, cause a little bit of friction. And there could be other things, right? The losing could cause a little bit of friction. You could all of a sudden say, hey, this team is not where this team was when you signed me as a free agent, when I thought that this team is actually going to win 10 games this year, have a chance at the playoffs. This is actually a team that's really far away from that. Maybe I don't really want to be a part of it. So I don't know the ins and outs of what happened with Germaine Pratt. Clearly, they weren't seeing eye to eye. He went out on social media on yesterday, put a somewhat cryptic tweet out there, a little Jay-Z reference or whatever, and, just kind of same grind, different week with a different mentality or whatever. I'm paraphrasing. But, it's clearly there was some kind of change of philosophy, and Pete Carroll is going to just turn things over. Hey, if this isn't not working, we're going to move on and do something else. Go back to what he did in Seattle his first year, over 300 different roster changes. So this is not a surprise to me. And honestly, if things don't get better sooner rather than later, I wouldn't be surprised to see more moves happening.
Yeah, and I think it's easier for a guy like Pete Carroll to have more of an impact, or I don't want to say control, but have more control of a room when it's younger guys. Like when you're an established veteran, and remember, they picked up Germaine Pratt because since he couldn't really keep him on the books when it came to their finances. So that was a piece that the Raiders went out and got, but he's a veteran. And I was just kind of surprised, Q, because he was one of the best linebackers on the team. So now you're looking at this roster, and listen, I didn't really think the defense was a big problem. I think their defense has been one of the bright spots. I know they give up 40 points, but when the defense is out on the field for that long, they're going to get tired. And listen, they just couldn't keep that score, to a tighter and closer score for the Raiders to come back in that game. So I don't really put that on the defense, but I will say a little bit surprised. But if you're trying to build a certain type of culture, this move for Pete Carroll does make sense, because at the same time, Q, you don't want to lose the room. Right. And I think that's another question that will probably be coming into later on in the show. But coming up in the next segment, we are going to be talking about Gino Smith, and if it is officially pick it time, or if Gino's confidence will maybe let him play a little bit better. That's coming up next. You're listening or watching the Raiders Squad Show. All right, this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Every day we make decisions, but on PrizePicks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. Playing PrizePicks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown, and you're in the game. What I actually like about PrizePicks is they give you a whole bunch of promos. So you can drop $50 and they'll give you like $50 back. But even sometimes they give you like free $5 promos and stuff. And other betting apps don't really do that. So I do love PrizePicks for that. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. All right, welcome back, Raider Nation. Remember, if you like the content, hit that like and subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media channels. You'll see in the description below the ways that you can connect with us. Coming up later in the show, we usually do a segment, questions with Q and Link. We're still going to be doing that, but you can drop your comments as well, because I'm seeing a lot of passion, Q, from a lot of Raider fans this week. and obviously, like, Raider Nation, like, regardless if the Raiders are good or if they're bad, Raider Nation shows out. And they're extremely passionate, one of the best fan bases in the NFL. When the Raiders are good, it's good for the NFL, Q. That's what I feel like, right?
There's no doubt. There's no doubt. Yeah, that's obvious.
Yeah, and so right now, Raider Nation's not feeling too good, Q. And I know both of us grew up as Raider fans, and it's really tough to see the team lose a game 40-6. And a lot of that blame, as you know, in football, goes on the coach and goes on the quarterback. Gino Smith, 9 interceptions in 5 games this season. I know you said before that you obviously believe that Geno is, the better quarterback, and I'm not going to disagree with you on that. Yeah. But do you think there's a time that they do look at putting in a guy like Kenny Pickett? Because at this rate, Q, it's like, what's the worst that could happen after losing 40-6?
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that's under consideration. I still think Geno's the better quarterback, but he's not playing as a better quarterback, right? His play is saying that, hey, you know what, maybe I'm not that guy. And I don't really know why. I don't know why he's playing the way that he is. I really don't. After what he was able to do in Seattle and actually play pretty well, I'm surprised he's playing like this. And, what I mean by this is, staring down the receivers, trying to force it into double and triple coverage, and, just taking a bunch of sacks. I mean, holding on to the ball. We talk about the offensive line, but he's holding on to the ball for a long time. He's not making good decisions. He's not getting the team in and out of the huddle the way I think he should. It seems like the clock is running down on the play clock a lot. It just doesn't seem like he's very comfortable. And even on certain passes that should be layups, he's missing them. Ashley Genty out in the flat. That's a layup. Missed it. It's just throw it high. It's stuff like that to me that's got me thinking that he's thinking too much, right? He can't go out there and think. He just needs to go out there and play. And somehow, some way, there's a problem with what he's got going on right now. And so, yeah, at some point, and I don't know if this is intentional or this is just how it happens, but the last few games, it seems like the camera has gone to Pete Carroll talking to Kenny Pickett a lot. I don't know if you've seen that or if it's just me, but I keep seeing Kenny Pickett on the screen, and I keep seeing Pete Carroll talking to him. And even last week, you saw them working on Kenny Pickett's helmet. So clearly there was some discussion of, yeah, maybe we should stop the bleeding and put this guy in there and let him see what he could do. And then Pete Carroll said that, well, no, we still need to keep on practicing. So he stuck with Geno. And then he told us on yesterday, well, G was solid. I'm like, well, not really. I mean, he's not really solid at all. So I'm not too sure what the end-all be-all goal is. I feel like the Raiders didn't go out and draft a quarterback early in the draft, so they didn't have somebody sitting right behind them that the fans could start pounding the table for, and there could be a discussion for, and players could say, hey, why don't you get that guy in, like what you saw happen in New York with the Giants when they decided, hey, we're going to go with Jackson Dart as opposed to Russell Wilson, right? And I know it's not the same exact scenario, but I feel like he didn't want to put someone behind him just like that, so they went and drafted Cam Miller late in the draft, and obviously he's on the practice squad, so he's not a guy that's going to threaten Geno for playing time or even put him into consideration. But at some point, right, you have to think about it. I'm not saying that they're going to do it right now. I don't think, again, and if you listen to the Locked On Raiders podcast this morning, I said if there's going to be any move, it'll probably happen during the bye week after the Kansas City game, only because it would allow more time for that Kenny Pickett to get ready and get prepared, have a little bit extra time running with the ones. But that's all just a gut feeling. That's not any report coming from anywhere. It's not anyone telling me that. I'm just thinking at some point you've got to stop the bleeding. If he goes out there and stinks it up this week against Tennessee and then goes to Kansas City and stinks it up as well, I think that Pete Carroll won't have any option. Even though I know he doesn't want to sit Geno down, I don't think he'll have any option.
Yeah, and I think the most important game probably for Raider Nation is obviously against the Chiefs. Like when we looked at the schedule, that was probably the game that you were circling on your calendar. But the way the Raiders are playing right now, I'm not excited for that game, Q. I will say, though, for Geno Smith, I don't think Kenny Pickett is a better quarterback than Geno. I'll say that. I've been very tough. I've been very tough on Geno this season. However,
you went in on Twitter. You went on Twitter, man. You during the game, man. You a cold piece of work during the bing, 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 send, bing, 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 send, bing, bing. I was like, damn, look out.
Oh yeah, you got to be passionate, right? I mean, it's better than me screaming at my TV and losing my voice, because that did happen on Sunday. I will say this though, I think for like I mentioned, I don't think Pickett is a better quarterback than Geno, but I will say this: it's just frustrating to watch Geno Smith. And I think that's the thing for Raider fans. I don't think Kenny Pickett's going to come in and then we're going to miraculously start winning games. Right. That's not what I'm saying. It's just, I think there needs to be a shakeup at quarterback because Geno Smith is playing terrible football. And it's also a thing for his confidence too. It's like, you can't go out there and continue to throw that many picks a game and not have your confidence drop a little bit. I do think Geno's confidence is dropping. So at the same time, it's like, maybe he needs a reset. And maybe that means going to a guy like Kenny Pickett. And, we talked about this on another show, and you were like, well, how do you let a young quarterback grow? Like if they're not getting playing time, if they're not getting those reps, right? And it's like, well, you just got to be able to let them play and get those reps and get that time. And the way that Geno's been playing, I think a lot of Raider Nation is just upset and frustrated at this point. And he's been very tough to watch.
As they should be.
Yeah.
Right, as they should be.
And he's just been very tough to watch. Like, he's clearly not reading defenses. He makes bad decisions. He stares down his receivers. And I shouldn't know where you're going to throw the ball from my couch. I really shouldn't know that. Like, that is concerning to me. Mm-hmm. And so for Geno, it's like maybe he needs a reset. And I wouldn't mind Pete Carroll going to Kenny Pickett earlier, but he did say that he thought about going to Kenny Pickett last game, but he just thought they'd ride it out with Geno and practice. And that upset me too, because it's like, we're practicing during a game, but it's 40 to 3. Mm-hmm. Okay, sure. Right. Because they scored in the first quarter and they scored in the fourth quarter. So that's why they had 6 points in that game. But it's also the factor of like, I get that Pete wants to go with his guy. Like if I was a coach, I would rock with all my people. I'd be hiring my people. I'd be trying to have my people play. So I understand that factor. And for that, I do appreciate Pete, but I just don't think Geno has the confidence right now. And I think it's time to look elsewhere. And it's not to say that they're in a better position to win games. It's just it's like they're not winning right now. It can't get as bad as 40-6. Like, I don't know if it can get worse. Do you think it can get worse than 40-6?
If it gets worse than 40-6, we're all in trouble, right? I mean, because again, that's a whooping. And one of the things that I was excited about with Pete Carroll as the head coach, I didn't expect to see these type of games. I didn't see that. I saw a team that was going to be prepared. a coach that's been there, done that, a guy that's got a resume that says he knows how to, manage players, coach up players, put them in position to succeed. And I'm not seeing that. Really, I mean, to be honest, and this is not to bring up, old stuff, but I'm not seeing much difference in this team that I saw from a team that was led by Antonio Pierce, who was a first-time head coach, right? And I had a lot of respect for AP, and I just realized that it was too much too soon for him. But right now, I'm not seeing anything different. What am I seeing that's so much better from Pete Carroll, who's been doing it for many, many moons and has got, a Super Bowl championship, a national championship, and will be a Hall of Famer one day? I'm not seeing anything different right now. And so this team obviously still has a long ways to go. They have a lot that they need to still build on. They've got to figure out who their quarterback, who they handpicked, they brought in by way of trade, how he can get right. Because you're right, he's not playing with confidence right now. That's obvious. And I don't know what snaps him out of that. I don't know if he has a really good game. I don't know if he has a series of games. I don't know what it's going to take to get him back right. But he had a successful game week 1 in New England. The only problem with that is a lot of the things we're seeing him do now, he did week 1. A lot of the throwing the ball in the double coverage, triple coverage, into windows that probably shouldn't have been thrown into, he did it. Problem is he got away with it. So when you get away with it once, what do? You get confidence that you could do something. I say that all the time when it comes to anything in life, right? When people get caught doing something that they ain't supposed to be doing, whatever it is, I always say, ain't the first time they've done that. That's just the first time they got caught. So this is the first time that Geno's getting punished for it, right? He's throwing the ball in the double coverage. I got a strong enough arm. I can do it. Nope, this guy's jumping it because now they've seen it on film. This is what he's going to do. Now they're jumping the routes. Now they're baiting him in to throw that ball that he thinks he can get to Jacoby Myers, and he can't. Now they got to go make the play, but they're making the play. So they've seen it on film. These guys get paid too. They're seeing it on film. They know his tendencies. They know that he's not playing with a ton of confidence, and he's trying to do too much. That's what he did in Seattle. That's what he did in Seattle last year, right? When the Raiders traded for him, a lot of Seahawks fans said, "Oh, good luck with Geno in the red zone." Why is that? Oh, because he turns the ball over a lot, throws a lot of interceptions in the red zone. Why? Because he's trying to do too much. He didn't have confidence in the offensive line. He was sacked 50 times last year, which was second only behind Caleb Williams, 68. So he didn't have confidence in the offensive line, so he's trying to do too much. He's trying to play hero ball. Well, you know what he's trying to do right now through 5 weeks? He's trying to do too much. He's trying to play hero ball. Instead of just allowing the game to come to him, now he's trying to do too much. So now they've got to treat him like the Raiders were trying to treat their quarterbacks last year, when it was this team's identity is supposed to be a very strong defense, a hell of a run game, and then a quarterback just not get in the way. Now they have to literally say, Geno, don't get in the way. Let the defense do a lot of heavy lifting. Give Ashton and Mostert the ball. Let them do a lot of heavy lifting and don't get in the way, right? Throw the ball to the easy layups right there and keep the chains moving. But don't do too much. And that sucks because he has a strong arm. He can stretch the field. He can be a really good quarterback and make some big plays. He's not doing it. So I can tell you what you can do, but you're showing me what you can't do, and that's a problem.
Yeah, and I think sometimes I'm kind of speechless because it's like it wasn't supposed to go this way, and I think that's why a lot of Raider fans are really upset. You trade a draft pick to get Gino Smith, and he's supposed to be that guy that I always said he was kind of a Band-Aid, but he's also a guy that was supposed to change the trajectory of this team. But Q, is this team better than last year? Because I think they're worse than last year.
So I'm saying, like, it's, it doesn't feel like that they're any better. And that's the problem, because we all believe that they were better. And being around the team and in training camp and watching them put it all together felt like that they were going to be better. And the energy is better. And, just the way that the players are acting around the facility and just seeing them in the locker room, like everything there is better. And look, the season's not over because they're 1-4. It's only through 5 weeks. They still got 12 games guaranteed. It just has to get turned around quickly. They've got to figure out and identify exactly what they're doing wrong, get some of their guys back. Obviously, Colton Miller being down is a problem. Brock Bowers being out is a problem, right? Big Mike, he might come back this week. Hopefully he does. They just got to figure things out. What do they do best? Like, what do the Raiders do best? Right now, I'll tell you, the identity of this team is through the run game.
Yeah.
Ashton Jeanty and Raheem Mostert are the two players that really set the tone for this team. And I know Jeanty hasn't had incredible games where he's just having, 100+ yards each and every week, obviously outside that Bears game, but he's doing what he's supposed to do. He had a really good day on Sunday. It just is overshadowed because the Raiders got whooped, but he did well. That's what they're going to have to keep doing. They're going to have to keep passing him the ball, keep handing him the ball, let him do a lot of the heavy lifting, let Mostert do a lot of the heavy lifting, And Geno's going to have to just try to, make the smart decisions, the right decisions, get the ball out of his hands quickly to the playmakers that can make things happen and go from there. This team, the best identity that they have right now is the run game with Genty and Mostert.
Yeah, and I think Genty has looked pretty good as of late in the last 2 games. I think he's looked good throughout the season, but obviously the O-line just wasn't opening up the holes for him. Now he's seeing those holes. And let's also give some props to a guy like Stone Forsythe, who I thought had like a decent game. I think he deserves some credit because, I think he looked pretty decent stepping in for a guy like Colton Miller. Those are some very big shoes to fill. And I think for that game, I was kind of like, okay, like I was worried, Q, going into that game, to be honest with you. I'm like, This might be a very, very tough one for him, but he held it down. And that's what made watching Geno just a little bit more frustrating, because it's like, yeah, you got sacked 4 times, but at the same time, you did have protection a lot too. And the offense just couldn't get going. And I agree with you. I think going through the run game, going through Ashton Genty, Raheem Mostert is going to be key for the Raiders. I think one of the big questions, though, also is, Q, is I know you're saying that, football, the season's not over yet. So for you, I think there's that point in the season where you're like, okay, it's a wrap. For me at this point of the season, from what I've seen through 5 weeks, this is not only not a good football team, it's a terrible product. And I remember I was looking at the Raiders schedule at the beginning of the year. I'm like, okay, I'm going to hit up 3 games in October, November, and December. And as a Raiders fan, I'm like, I'm not spending like $1,500 on a trip to Vegas and seeing the Raiders lose like that. And I think that's another thing for fans. It's like they're giving their money to the Raiders. Like, it's expensive. If you want good seats, you're paying over $5 bills for a ticket. Like, let's be serious here, right? Yep. And you're paying for a hotel. You're paying for flights if you're, coming in from Cali or wherever on the West Coast. Raider Nation's everywhere across America. So it's like people are flying in from everywhere for these games and supporting this team. But this is not a good product. And every year, Raider fans, we get excited. And we're like, this is going to be the year where they kind of turn things around. Hopefully, if they, double their amount of wins, maybe they can sneak into the playoffs. And this is the product that we're getting on the road, and it's embarrassing. That was an embarrassing thing. And I think for the Raiders, it's also just like, here's the thing, Q. I know they're not a good football team, but it's like, just play with some effort, play with some pride, and be competitive in games. If they can do that, even if they lose, I'll be all right. Because I'll be real with you, Q. I don't want them to win another game if they're going to be this bad. I want a good draft pick. I want the Raiders to get a good draft pick. And I'm not saying tank, but it's just like, just be competitive in games. And I feel like they had no energy. And I've talked about the 10 a.m. game. And you mentioned, Q, like the last few years, the Raiders have been playing good during their 10 a.m. games. Other than the Pats game, it looks like the same old Raiders during those 10 a.m. games. And that is really, really tough to watch. What did you think about their energy on the road? I felt like they weren't prepared. And I don't know if that's necessarily on the players, but more so on the coaches, Q.
Yeah, that's the problem, is if they're not prepared, that's 100% on the coaches. And this coaching staff is too experienced to have that situation. That's my thing. Like this coaching staff, there should never be a time when we come back and follow up the game and say, yeah, that team didn't look prepared. There should never be a time that happens. We should never have that conversation. I don't mind a loss. Obviously, I don't want a loss, right? But I get losses are going to happen. But to not be competitive and to lose 40-6 or whatever the score was against the Commanders, like to allow 40-plus points a game, that's not okay. That, to me, I'm thinking, okay, what is going on? Where is the major disconnect going on here? And look, I'll give the defense credit. They're doing everything they can early on. They started out great, 3 and out, right? They made the Colts do something they rarely do, punt. And then the Raiders go on a long drive, and they only get 3. And then all of a sudden the floodgates start opening. You know what I mean? It's just like everything just started to snowball on this team. And I don't really understand, and I can't really put my finger on exactly why. It's not something I expected. And so that's why when I look up at this team and see that they're 1-4, I'm thinking, how in the hell did they get here? How did this happen? Because this is not what I expected. And I don't think this is what anybody expected, right? I mean, this is the reason why you bring in Pete Carroll, a guy who's experienced, to make sure that this thing doesn't happen like this. I mean, you could have these kind of results with an inexperienced head coach that had to have a better understanding of why it happened. But when you have a guy that's experienced like Pete Carroll and has got the skins on the wall that Pete Carroll does, there's really no excuse for this. And like I said, he even listening to him talk yesterday, being in the press conference room with him yesterday, just seemed like he's, I don't want to say confused, but also didn't understand and didn't think that this was going to be what it is right now. So they've got a lot of work to do. they don't have time to, go and completely overhaul everything. The season doesn't slow down. It keeps trucking for everybody. So they just got to try to figure it out. But they've got to identify what they're going to do, how they plan on attacking teams moving forward. Is this going to be let's check out all the young guys? Like you saw an uptick in Jack Best. You saw him get more targets on Sunday. And I think that you're going to keep seeing him get more targets. Like Dante Thornton is that experiment kind of slowing down? Are you deciding that, okay, never mind, not going to try to, force feed him the ball because it's just not working out yet? I mean, what are you planning on doing? That's what they've got to figure out, what they decide is best for this team moving forward, how they can get their guys developed as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and by the way, Raider Nation, coming up in the final segment, we are going to be reading some of your comments. And if you got questions for Q, please drop them in the chat. We're going to get to that in the final segment. But this kind of sets up our next segment as well, as we're going to be talking about Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly, just their era after 5 games, because coming into the season, lots of excitement. But after 5 games, we can kind of assess what has happened so far this season. So that's coming up next, Raider Nation. Keep it locked here on the Locked On Network. You're listening or watching the Raider Squad Show. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more with the double IHS top safety pick, plus awards more than anyone else. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes relevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Welcome back, Raider Nation. If you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. We also appreciate you making the Locked On Raiders or the Raider Squad Show your first listen of the day. You continue to help this channel grow, and we do appreciate you. And also, this is an interactive show. So coming up in the next segment, drop your comments and questions because we will be getting to that. Q, I think we got to talk a little bit about the era that Chip Kelly and Pete Carroll are in now, because at the beginning of the year, lots of excitement. You could see the change. You could see the culture shift. And here's the thing. I think time, it has to be involved in this. Like, there has to be a little bit of patience, even though Raider Nation has been patient for like 20 years now, and you're trying to see that change, right?
20 plus, yeah.
But after, 5 games, what do you think things look like? Because right now there's a lot of heat on Pete, and some people are saying, maybe Pete should be out, but I think that's a little bit unfair. And I also think the ageism thing is unfair too. Like, I know it's kind of crazy. Like, go ahead, Q. What were your thoughts on people saying like Pete's too old? He may have lost it.
That old stuff is silly, man. I don't sign up for that. I'm okay with frustration with the team. I'm okay with frustration with the coach, this, that, and the other. But just to all of a sudden say, oh, well, he's 74, he's too old, he's passed by, and he's senile, and just all the disrespectful things that are out there. I'm not that dude. I get it. It's frustration, but I'm not going to be that guy to point the finger there. Look, that dude's probably forgot more football than any of us will ever know. So I know that he knows what he's doing. It just isn't translating yet. And so I can't tell Raider Nation, oh, be patient. Because the one thing that is consistent, coaches will come and go. GMs will come and go. Players will come and go. You could put anybody that's getting a paycheck from the Raiders right now, they'll come and go. The one thing that doesn't change is Raider Nation. The ones that are listening to this show, the ones that go and buy the merchandise, the ones that fly to Vegas, the ones that, are willing to fight with other fans of other teams. Like, Raider Nation is through and through. So it doesn't matter who the coach is. The Raider Nation didn't pick him. It doesn't matter who the GM is. Raider Nation did pick him, but you're going to support him. So when things aren't going the way it's supposed to be going, and it's not, obviously, 1-4, and Raider Nation's frustrated, I get it. Like I said, I'm not a disrespectful dude, so I'm not going to come off and pop off and talk about a person's age, this, that, and the other, whatever. That I'll let someone else do that. But I understand the frustration. And so you mentioned earlier that you're not going to pay a lot of money to come to Vegas and go see this product. I don't blame you. There's some that will yell and scream until the cows come home. You can't sell your tickets. Why can't you? You're not getting rewarded. It's like being in an abusive relationship and you keep coming back. What do we say about abusive relationships? Get out. Get out of it, right? So I don't blame Raider Nation for being frustrated at all. I'll never question Raider Nation being frustrated. I think there's other ways to show your frustration than being disrespectful and talk about a man's age, this, that, and the other, and talk about he's senile and, all this other stuff and talk about different, I see people talk about different like dementia and everything. Like, people are affected by that every year. Like, that's some people in our family. My family have suffered from dementia. So I'm never going to play around with something like that. But, that's just me. And some people will say, oh, well, you're soft or you're a punk or what. That's fine. I don't care. But, it is what it is. I just think that this thing has to get turned around. Being frustrated is fine. It's on the team. It's on the coaches. It's on the players to get this thing figured out.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. Like, I'm not over here saying, Pete's too old and he's senile and he's got dementia. Like, that's a little bit like going over the line there. That's mad disrespectful. But I'll say this. I think because as Raider fans, we've expected this turnaround to come for a while. And it's just looking like last season. It's looking like McDaniels. It looks terrible right now. But here's the thing. The Raiders have been changing coaches and, their GM so much. Like, it's like a carousel. It's terrible. And it's like you have to stick with a guy to see what he can do. Because if there's no continuity, then you're just pretty much switching and just changing. And you can't do that. Like, there needs to be a coach that they stick with for a minute. And Pete has the experience. Pete has turned around things. So right now things aren't going good, but we know this is not a good football team. Pete can also only work with the guys that he's been given. Right. This is also on the GMs. Like, Pete is working with what he has, and you have to trust the process. Now, I think a lot of people are more frustrated with the decisions that are going on. However, like you and Link say, you got to let the coaches coach. You got to let the players play. And I still believe that to be true. But I think there has to be some shakeups that happen. Now, as for Chip Kelly, for me, Q, he was one of the guys this season that kind of really had to prove it for me because his stints in the NFL weren't very good. But what do you think you've seen from Chip Kelly so far? Because so far, it's like every week they're trying something a little bit different, but there really hasn't been any adjustments like that first game. That first game against the Pats, they came out in the second half. There was adjustments. We have not seen that since week 1.
Yeah, I think Chip Kelly is still a work in progress. I don't think that his offense is as rhythmic as we all thought it was going to be. Obviously, they're struggling in the red zone. What were they 0-4 in the red zone, right? I mean, you're not going to win games like that. They've got to find a way to continue to get the ball into the playmakers' hands. I feel like that they're kind of slow playing Ashton Jeanty a little bit too much, trying to limit his carries, trying to make sure he gets to the end of the season. Hell, I want to see him succeed now, right? I need to see him succeed now. I need to see Jack Bech succeed now. If Dante Thornton is going to be a guy, make him successful now, right? Feed Jacoby. Like, Jacoby didn't even get really any targets till late in the game. The game, I felt like, was already out of hand before Jacoby really started getting targeted. Like, I mean, if you have playmakers, how are you going to get them the ball? What do they do best? Like Lincoln says it all the time. What is the handful of plays that you run that when you need yardage, you need a first down, you could run them? I think they're starting to identify Ashton Jeanty and some of his outside runs, but look how long it's taken to get him to the outside, right? I mean, it was forever. It was just up the gut, and it wasn't working. Shotgun, pistol, not necessarily working. Under center, Lincoln suggested it. It works a lot better, right? There's certain things that it seems like they do that's a lot better than others, and they need to focus in on that, right? And so I think he's a very sharp offensive mind. I think he's really one of the better play callers, in football. It just hasn't shown to be that consistently yet. Like, there's glimpses of it, and you're like, okay, like the scripted plays, fantastic. That scripted drive was great. But then also when you get off script, it's like, okay, what are you going to do now? And the adjustments haven't come like you mentioned. So he's got some work to do in the lab. They all have work to do in the lab. They all need to look into the mirror and say, how can I be better? Right? Kirk Morrison said it to me perfect on yesterday. He said, I want guys that point the thumb instead of point the finger. Meaning I want the guys that put the thumb at me. Like, okay, how do I get better? As opposed to, hey, how do you get better? You need to be better. You need to. Instead, it's like, no. I need to be better. And this is how we're going to do it.
And here's the thing. I think you just got to give him time too. Like, this is a new system. And I think that's another thing too, that I had to realize. It's like, I want the Raiders to be good right away because this is what we've been hyping up, Q, since the show started. Yeah. We've been talking about how this offense was going to be dynamic. But at the same time, that's another reason why I'm like, okay, maybe the Raiders do let Geno start the next game against the Titans, because that could be a game where they kind of like regroup and maybe Geno has a good game. But also Geno's learning a new system. Like, that's tough for a quarterback, right? It shouldn't be. I mean, he's a veteran quarterback, so
they're 5 weeks into the season now. Like, if he doesn't have this, if he doesn't have a good grasp of this offense, then there's a problem there too. You know what I mean? Like, I get it that the CBA doesn't allow you to practice as much as you should, but if you're the starting quarterback and you're the one that's out there puffing your chest about being the starting quarterback of the Raiders and what you're going to do, this, that, and the other, then go do it. Get in the lab. It's all about the work that you do when the lights aren't on, when people aren't watching, when, the video camera's not rolling, right? What are you doing besides being like a film junkie. And he says it all the time. I'm a film junkie. I sit at home and I study film. Okay, well, if you're studying film as much as you say you are, which I don't doubt that he is, he should see what he's doing wrong too. And he should be able to understand how to correct it. Okay, I'm staring these receivers down. I'm doing this, that, and the other. You know what I mean? Like, again, thumbs instead of fingers. How can I get better? How can I make myself better? If I'm better, the rest of the team is going to be better because they go as I go. That's what needs to happen with Geno Smith. I have no doubt he wants to be really good. I sit there and talk to him every week, right? He gives really good answers at the podium every single week. He answers every question that I ask. He's fantastic. But now you got to translate it to the field. And that's what's going on right now. It's not translating to the field.
Yeah, and you know what? You're right. Like, he should have picked it up by now if he is studying that much film. But that's also why maybe I'm thinking they're taking a little bit of a longer time of putting Kenny Pickett in. Maybe they're trying to get him adjusted. Maybe they are going to make that switch. And it's not to say that they're going to start winning games with Kenny Pickett, but it just might be a shake that they need. And you never know, they could go back to Geno. And that's my question too. Like, Q, like, what do you think that does confidence-wise? Like, do you think if they decide, like, for example, let's just set the stage here. Say the Titans game goes bad. Because there's a possibility the Raiders could win that game. There's a big possibility they can lose that game. Now, say Geno has a Gino Smith 2025 performance in the first half, and they go to Kenny Pickett in the second half. Does that kind of shift Geno's confidence to be even worse than it already is?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if he gets sat down, then, yeah, his confidence is definitely going to be shot. Right. I mean, right now, what he needs is to see some success. He needs to say, and look, I played basketball. That was my thing. He needs to see the ball go through the hoop a couple times. Right. He needs to see a couple buckets go in. He needs to be, Steph Curry, hit a couple threes and say, OK, now I'm back. Right. He needs to be that guy. And that's what I think he's looking for. And it feels like to me, and this is just, me with the naked eye, just observation. This is not conversation that we've had. It feels like he knows that those interceptions are happening and the next play is going to make up for that one. Right. The next, okay, this one, I'm going to wow them with this big touchdown pass, and everyone's going to forget about the one interception I threw or the two interceptions I throw. And that's not how you can't make up for those. You just move on, but you can't try to overcompensate for what you did wrong on the other play. Right. You just have to continue to move on. You have to be that strong leader for the team. So I don't know exactly what it's going to take for him to see the ball go through a hoop a few times, but that's what he's looking for. And I think that Pete Carroll knows that. And that's why he's kind of back and forth on the fence of if they're going to sit him down or not, and if they're going to go to Kenny Pickett or not. I do think, like I said earlier in the show, if this keeps up and he's playing at the level that he is, and he's turning the ball over 2 or 3 times a game, he's going to force the hand to make them sit him down. But I mean, I know he wants to win. I see the frustration in the locker room after the game. I get that, but you could be as frustrated, you could be as upset as you want to be. You could be the guy that says, hey, that's my bad. But everyone gets tired of the my bad guy. Right? Nobody wants to be with the my bad guy forever. Like, we all played sports, right? There was always that one person on your team that always admit that they did, oh, that was my fault. That was my guy. Oh, my bad. Hey, my bad. Okay, I get it. Just do it right. It was your bad. Yeah. Okay, do it right. I don't want to hear my bad anymore. Just do it right. That's what he has to do.
Yeah, and we're going to see what happens in this next game against the Titans, and we are going to be previewing that game on Thursday. But coming up in the next segment, Raider Nation, we're going to be talking about if the Raiders are going to be making some more moves. Lots of talks about some possible trades that may be made, and if the Raiders are at that point of the season. And also keep your questions and comments coming, because in the next segment, Q will be answering some of them, and we will be taking some of your comments. So keep it locked here on the Locked On Network. You're watching or listening to the Raider Squad Show. Welcome back, Raider Nation. If you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media channels. And if you have already hit that like and subscribe button, we do appreciate you, and we appreciate you rocking with us, because the channel and the show continues to grow. And whether Locked On Raiders is your first listen of the day or the Raider Squad Show is right after that, we do appreciate you, because you are the main reason why this channel and show is growing. All right, Q, I think we got to get into the fact that, they made the move for Germaine Pratt, and Pete Carroll just said, like, listen, we decided to go a different way. Yeah. And I think there may be some conversations about some trades being made, and I've seen some people throwing in some names in there. Do you feel like a big move could be made before the deadline, which is coming up in November?
Yeah, I think so. If they don't get back to winning ways, if they don't start looking like a better team, I always call it evaluation season, Chantel. And what I mean by that is, at a certain point, you start to look at the team and say, all right, who's here next year and who's not, right? You start evaluating for the future. And I hate to talk about that in October, That to me, when I start talking about evaluation season, I had a guy hit me up yesterday and said, I know how the season's gone when you start using the evaluation season term. And that's just something I've always done. And I don't want to talk about evaluation season. I don't want to talk about the draft. I don't want to talk about this, that, and the other. But when you're 1-4 and you're playing the way that you are, you can't help it to think that. And so, yeah, long story short, the trade deadline is November 4th. My birthday is November 3rd, by the way, just throwing that out there. So, if the Raiders aren't playing better, I could see a team calling and saying, hey, man, is Jacoby Myers available? You're in a contract situation with him anyway. He wants a contract deal. We'll take him, right? This is what we'll give up. Okay, cool. We got Jack Besh, got Dante Thornton. Okay, got these guys that I could evaluate and keep seeing how well they play. Yeah, okay, we'll go ahead and make that move. I don't think there's too many other players that I could see teams asking for. Maybe a Tyree, maybe a Malcolm Koonce, but they haven't really shown anything to warrant that, right? So I don't know if there's anyone else out there that they could find expendable. Maybe JPJ if the relationship doesn't get better. I wouldn't do it before someone loses their mind. I'm not saying I would do it. I think JPJ is one of the best, linemen that they have. But just in case they decide that they're, not going in the right direction and whatever is going on behind the scenes between him and the coaching staff, which clearly there's something going on there, I could see maybe a move for him, but that would probably be extreme. So I could see them, moving a couple guys out of there. But I don't think like any major moves. I don't think that they're trading. Like I don't think they're trading Max, right? I don't think that's happening because I think that'd be silly. But it's at some point, they're going to have to answer those tough questions when teams call.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question. Also, by the way, Q, a lot of fellow Scorpios in the chat. Raider Nation is like Scorpio season. Just saying. Right. We'll remember that Q's birthday is before the deadline. I'll say this though. If they were to trade Max, that's a complete overhaul. That's when you know that they're going full rebuild if they do trade Max Crosby.
That's Khalil Mack 2.0.
Yeah, and which I'm still not over the fact that they traded a guy like Khalil
None of us
Mack.
are.
Yeah,
none of us are.
I never get used to seeing him in a Chargers uniform. Never did against when he was playing with the Bears. But I'll say that if they were to trade Max Crosby, that's when you know they're going full into a rebuild. And I don't think that they're trying to do that. I think there's pieces here on this team, Q. That's why I think it's frustrating. This team should be better than its record. For sure. And I can't put my finger on it. I don't know if it's the coaching. I don't know if it's a system. I don't know what it is, but they've also dealt with some injuries. But at this point, there's no excuses after week 5. They cannot have a performance like they did against the Colts, because if they do, then I do think it's time for them to make some changes. Because I think the question is, Q, like, what is the identity of the Raiders? Because I'm going to be serious. They're not a contender. They don't look like a playoff team. They don't look like a playoff team. So at this point, it's like, well, is it a rebuild? Because they're not fully saying that. And I think that's the frustrating part, right? Is like they're trying to rebuild on the fly, and that I don't think that ever works. It's like you have to commit to the rebuild. So it's either you're going to go and you're going to, bring in some veterans and pair them up with some young guys and build through the draft, or you're going to like actually just build through the draft and just like clean house, get rid of guys like Max, and stuff like that, and try to get draft picks. They had 11 draft picks.
Yeah.
And I think now people are looking at this draft and they're like, what do we do at the draft? Like, do you think that in the next draft, Q, that they should try and go get a quarterback?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I thought they should have done that already. Yeah. Right. I've been pounding the table for them to go get a quarterback since 2020. Right. I thought that, and anyone who's listened to me for a while knows I was 10 toes down pounding the table for Jalen Hurts. They didn't go get that guy. They went and got Damon Arnett with their second first-round pick. Enough said. Right. But I thought that they should always have a quarterback sitting behind Derek Carr. So whenever they decided to make the move from DC, they would have a smooth transition. Instead, they made the reckless decision to move on from DC and not have an answer behind it. Right. I say it all the time. Don't quit your job if you don't have a job to go to. Right. Don't quit your job until you have a follow-up job. What they did is quit their job and they didn't have anything and thought, well, hey, you know what? We're the Raiders. We'll figure it out. And it don't work like that. You have to have a plan. The plan wasn't Jimmy G. The plan wasn't Gardner Minshew. The plan wasn't Aiden O'Connell. The plan wasn't Geno Smith, but that's what the plan has been. That's been the problem. They sat down a quarterback who, regardless how you feel about him, at least you knew what you consistently was going to get from him. You moved on from him, and you have no answer, and you have all this uncertainty. Nobody knew what the hell to expect from Jimmy G. Nobody knew what the hell to expect from Gardner Minshew. Oh, sorry, let me throw Jarrett Stidham and Desmond Ridder in there too. Don't want to shortchange those guys. But you get the point. Nobody had any idea what to expect at all from any of these guys. And now you got Gino Smith, who you traded for and gave money to, and he's underperforming. And he's playing like, well, what's going on? He's playing like Geno and the Jets, not Geno and the Seahawks. So they have to find and identify their guy. They have Max, they have Brock, they have Ashton, right? That's who they have. That's who you know that they have, no doubt about it, right? Maybe some of the JPJ, feel good about him. You know, maybe Caleb Rogers, Charles Grant, but you haven't seen it yet, so we don't know who those guys are. But you see there's a handful of dudes that are young guys that they could build around. Now you have to go and get your guy. A quarterback, a fresh young quarterback, will give that organization offensively and defensively a big boost of energy in the arm. Look at the Giants. And I know they got waxed this weekend by the Saints, but they had a bunch of energy when Jackson Dart went into the game. Right, just because they got a glimpse of the future. Look what Drake May's doing in New England, really balling. Look what happened when the Commanders got Jaden Daniels, who the Raiders wanted. Their whole team, their fan base got rejuvenized. Everybody gets that when you get that new quarterback, especially if it's the right guy. You got to go get the right guy, obviously, and that's up to your scouts and coaches to identify that guy.
Yeah, and I think when you make that decision to actually go in the draft and get a quarterback, that you're saying something instead of trying to get guys that are veterans and trying to come in and fill into the system. Yep. And also, like, this is not Geno from Seattle, clearly. This is a whole different era for Geno, I think, because I think the Jets era a little bit unfair for a guy like Geno, but that's a different conversation. Let's get to one comment here from Paul Leclerc. He says, besides Max, who on this defense starts elsewhere? Thomas Booker starts for us and couldn't get on the field in Philly. I've kind of liked what I've seen from a guy like Thomas Booker, though.
Fine.
Yeah, that's what I think. Do you think someone else on this defense starts elsewhere because of the, I guess, release of a guy like Germaine Pratt? They're going to have someone fill in for him, right?
Yeah, I think Eric Stokes could start. You know, he was a former first-round pick. The problem with him is he gets banged up, and the problem is he's banged up. Right. I mean, so that's the issue there. But I definitely think that he could start. Darian Porter might evolve into somebody. He's young, so you got to see. You know what Jeremy Chin brings to the table? He had a really good season last year in DC with the Commanders. So I'm not going to shake a stick at Jeremy Chin. Outside of that, you know, you really Tyree's he's not a starter right now. At least he's not playing starter snaps. He's not having the production yet. Malcolm hasn't really come around. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions. There's no doubt about that. It's just you got what you got, and you got to work through it. But, yeah, there's a couple guys that I could definitely see as starters, but not a whole lot to the Texans point.
Yeah, let's go to Anthony Mercado. Down by 37 in the fourth quarter, and you kick a field goal. That was a bad coaching decision. Q, like, how do you kind of even assess the coaching so far? Obviously, I think that's a conversation to be had because I think it was the coaching last game that was also a problem.
Well, I mean, look, there's not a, 37 down 37. There's not a 38-point play. So they were just looking for any kind of success. At that point, I was just like, man, how much time's left in this game? Right. Yeah. That's all I was thinking. I was like, just don't let a 50 burger get put on you. Right. I mean, it was because it was looking like it was trending towards that in the third quarter. I'm thinking, man, watching the game with my buddies, I'm just like, this ain't good, man. This is about to be 50 points before it's all said and done. So, yeah, I mean, it's not a good decision to kick a field goal down 37. But I mean, what was a touchdown would have just been a charity case at that point, just garbage time touchdown. So at that stage of the game, I was just trying to get to the clock to hit 000, so everybody can get up out of there and we can start talking about next week.
Yeah, and Ricky Two Toe says, update, AOC is not a starting quarterback. There's been some talk because Aiden O'Connell, I feel like he should be ready after the bye week. I'm not quite sure.
Probably.
But do you think there's a chance we see him this season if Geno doesn't pick it up?
I mean, there's a chance, sure. And I know there's a lot of Aiden O'Connell fans out there, and I'm not trying to sound disrespectful, but we saw him in Chip Kelly's offense, and it didn't look good, right? I mean, he wasn't going fast enough. They tried to speed him up during practice, and I mean, look, everything's worth a shot at this stage of the game, right? You need to see what you have in everyone. I don't want to slight anyone because right now nothing looks good. Geno doesn't look good. I don't expect Kenny Pickett to look good. I'm sure he'll probably get some burn at some point if this keeps up. And when Aiden gets healthy, then he'll probably get an opportunity. The problem is, for everyone that pounds the tail for Aiden O'Connell, how many times has he had a chance and then he got hurt? I mean, that's just reality. Is he gets hurt every chance he gets an opportunity to play. And that's just something we talk about it all the time. Your best ability is availability. He hasn't been available, right? I mean, last year they didn't start him. They started Minshew, but then they went to him. And what happened when they went to him? He got hurt. And then he came, and then they went back to Minshew. And then they went back to Aiden O'Connell. What happened? He got hurt. What happened this year? Why did they go get Kenny Pickett to begin with? Aiden got hurt. Like it's the same thing. Same dance, different song. It's just what keeps happening. So again, no disrespect to Aiden O'Connell, but right now there's no real great options on this Raiders team for the quarterback position. It's just not.
Yeah, and you know what? That's just the reality of it. We're going to see what the Raiders are going to do this Sunday against the Titans, a game that's 2 1-4 teams. We're going to be breaking it down on Thursday. And of course, Professor Link will be back on that show as well. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. If you're watching this later, drop your comments. We may be able to get to them on the next show. Thank you so much for rocking out with Q&I this morning. We'll be back on Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Pacific time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. Thanks so much, Raider Nation, and we'll see you on Thursday.